Welcome to MojoPlays, and today we're taking a look at all the times Resident Evil was too much for the censors.
Don't just stand there! Help me!
Before we begin, we publish new videos all week long, so be sure to subscribe to MojoPlays and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos. The intro.
It was Bravo Team's helicopter. Nobody was in it. But strangely, most of the equipment was still there.
No one will ever forget the hokey opening to the original Resident Evil, not with all that B-movie writing and violence. Well, the violence we were left to imagine anyways, for those of us in the US and Europe. Japan got to see everything that was just simply told to us. The bodies in the forest, the severed hand, Joseph's death. It was all shot but removed in the US and European versions. Whether this was eSerb's call or Capcom self-censoring is anybody's guess.
Jill, run for that house!
No decap.
What? Get away from me! No! Hey!
Now, the North American versions of the Resident Evil games are known to be pretty graphic in how certain characters die. A lot of limbs get thrown around, and many heads too. However, some regions, like Japan and Europe specifically, had decapitations censored all over the place. So characters that were killed off by hunters and the like had less gruesome ends than the scenes depicted in the North American releases. Zero and Peggy, the ratings boards for Japan and Europe respectively, have a long history of disapproval towards brutal deaths in media, so this was no surprise.
No.
Alien Anatomy? Resident Evil 2 has some pretty graphic game over screens, but even for 1998, censoring polygons was a tad questionable, don't you think? Regardless, Germany and Japan did not appreciate the savagery of the game over screens here. Japan had scenes fade to black before any violence was shown, whereas Germany had that in addition to blood changing from red to green and sometimes gray. It kind of makes some of the characters seem they're like human-like aliens. Everybody hates Leon. Speaking of violence being removed, Resident Evil 4 was just asking to be censored. RE4 has long been known for the various vicious ways Leon can die, as well as the combat, level design, and campy tone. So it's no surprise that Japan went and had just about every single death censored, and these censors would carry over into the HD re-releases years after. Of course, North Americans got to see all of these deaths as they were. Same for Europe. It's kind of why many of us are traumatized by the chainsaw death, which we're not allowed to show.
What are they planning? Chainsaw.
The Snake Key.
That pretty little thing will help you find the 2 key cards you're gonna need to join the party we're having over here. You gotta earn your way, Ethan.
Resident Evil 7 is perhaps the grossest game in the franchise due to how much interactivity there is with corpses and body parts. One scene involves Ethan digging into an unalived person's throat for a key. This clearly did not fly with Zero, the Japanese ratings board. Rather than reach inside the corpse for the key, the Japanese version of RE7 just lets players grab the key instead of enduring a disgusting moment. Hey, we still like it because it's part of the horror. There's still a dress code. Resident Evil doesn't typically get too sexual, but when it came to Jill's skirt in the HD remake, or at least the releases that came after the original GameCube version, some shots had to be changed. Certain camera angles would give players a view of Jill's underwear, allowing them to see her white panties. Every version to have come out since the original has had a black void filled in to block players from peeking too much.
A second late, you would have fit nicely into a sandwich.
Really? Thanks.
Smoking.
Chris Redfield.
Though it hasn't had as heavy of a presence as, say, violence, smoking has faced some scrutiny during the censoring process of RE games. This was mainly on Capcom's end, as the company had fears about the perception of smoking in other countries. To mitigate possible controversy, Capcom opted to remove any smoking scenes Chris had in the first Resident Evil, and had tobacco advertisements replaced with anti-smoking PSAs in Resident Evil Outbreak File number 2. Too perfect. Nothing is more satisfying than nailing the perfect shot, that flawless pull of the trigger that ensures no zombie is bouncing back to life. Thing is that, you know, a head exploding is pretty visceral, and as expected, not everyone is going to be cool with it. Much of the franchise has faced censorship over this in Japan, most likely due to how it's the player enacting the violent act, which is something Zero has a long history of disapproving. And so, many of the Japanese versions have heads intact, much like the decapitation scenes. A regime of monsters. One of the more fascinating aspects of Code Veronica's story is how it gives us a glimpse into Kruger's twisted past, specifically his heritage. Various documents reveal one of Kruger's ancestors, Hilbert, was an officer of the Third Reich who ran a concentration camp and would hunt military artifacts during World War II. However, this part of the story was concerning for the game's European release and how it might be perceived. As a result, much of this part of the story was wiped from the game for PAL regions.
I'm going to let you live a little longer.
The face that changed survival horror. Let's be honest, that zombie turn has aged horribly. It just isn't scary, and perhaps it never really was. But for the folks hanging around in 1996, it was too much. In the Japanese version, the zombie drops Kenneth's head on the floor, rolling to face the camera. The US and European versions of RE1 got the simpler version, where Kenneth's head is never seen. Just that creepy head turn. Yeah.
What is it?
Watch out! It's a monster!
Let me take care of this.
Did any of these censors surprise you? Let us know down in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to MojoPlays for more Resident Evil videos, as well as some other interesting stuff every day.